Have you ever wondered why some people, despite having all the potential in the world, never achieve the success they deserve? The answer will surprise you. After studying over 500 of America's most successful men and women for more than 20 years, I discovered a shocking truth. Most people don't fear failure as they think they fear success. That's right, my friend. You're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of what happens if you succeed. Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? However, in my many years researching the philosophy of achievement, I've realized that the human mind has a peculiar mechanism for self-sabotage. While we say we want wealth, happiness, and fulfillment, something deep in our subconscious resists these achievements. And this resistance doesn't come from fear of failure, as most mistakenly believe. Today, I'll share with you a perspective that will completely transform your view of success and why it has slipped through your fingers. This isn't just another empty motivational speech. What I'll reveal are fundamental principles I've discovered through decades of studying the human mind and the behavioral patterns that separate true achievers from those who merely dream. Think about it. If fear of failure were really what's stopping you, why do so many people come so close to success only to sabotage themselves at the decisive moment? Why do they abandon promising projects when they start showing results? Why do they feel uncomfortable when they finally begin to prosper? The answer will change your life, just as it has changed the lives of thousands who have applied the principles I'll share with you today. And before we continue, I want you to subscribe to the channel right now, because what I'm about to say is rarely discussed in conventional personal development circles. This knowledge is reserved for those who are truly ready for genuine transformation. My name is Napoleon Hill, and I've spent my life studying the laws of success, not academic theories, but practical principles derived from the lives of figures like Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and hundreds of other giants of their time. What I discovered was a consistent pattern that explains why some people achieve greatness while others remain mediocre. Despite having similar capabilities, the difference isn't in talent, opportunities, or luck. It's in something much deeper, in the relationship each person has with the idea of success itself, and that's precisely what we're going to talk about today. The problem is deeper and more pervasive than most of us dare to admit. Everywhere I see men and women with extraordinary potential living lives of quiet desperation, as Thoreau said. People who start brilliant projects only to abandon them when they begin to flourish. People who sabotage their relationships when they become healthy. People who unconsciously create financial crises when they finally begin to accumulate wealth. Why does this happen? Because true success requires an identity transformation that few are truly prepared to face. Have you noticed how many people spend their lives saying they want to be rich, but when the opportunity arises, they find 1,000 reasons not to take advantage of it? Or how often we hear someone say they want to lose weight, but they continue habits that ensure the opposite. The reason isn't a lack of knowledge or resources. It's in the internal conflict between the conscious desire for success and the subconscious fear of the consequences of that success. Conventional approaches to success fail miserably because they only address the symptoms, not the root cause. They tell you to set goals, work hard, be persistent. That's like giving painkillers to a patient with a serious infection. It may temporarily mask the pain, but it doesn't cure the disease. Most who fail to achieve their goals don't understand they're fighting an invisible enemy, their own subconscious conception of what success would mean for their life. Meanwhile, the minority who triumph have learned to reconcile their conscious desires with their subconscious beliefs. They don't just want success, they feel deserving of it. Let me tell you about George, a man I met in Chicago. George was a talented salesman who consistently set sales records at his company, but every time he was about to receive a promotion to sales manager, Somehow he sabotaged his position, either by arguing with an important client or missing crucial meetings. For years he blamed bad luck, until a frank conversation revealed the truth. George grew up with an authoritarian father who always belittled executives and managers, calling them exploiters of workers. Without realizing it, George had internalized the belief that becoming a manager would transform him into someone despicable. And then there's Maria, a talented artist whose works began to gain recognition. The moment important galleries showed interest in her work, she suddenly lost her inspiration. The diagnosis. Growing up, she saw her mother, also an artist, ridiculed for her creative ambitions. Unconsciously, Maria feared that success would isolate her and expose her to the same kind of ridicule. These stories repeat themselves millions of times, with small variations across the country and throughout the world. Ordinary people with extraordinary talents, paralyzed not by fear of failure but by the terror of what will happen if they actually get what they say they want. What we truly fear isn't falling, but flying. It's not the possibility that we're not good enough, but the frightening prospect that perhaps we're much more powerful than we ever imagined. After dedicating my life to studying the principles of success alongside the greatest achievers of our era, I discovered that there is a path to reconcile this internal conflict, a methodology that not only identifies subconscious fears of success but transforms them into catalysts for achievement. What I'm going to share now aren't nebulous theories or superficial positive affirmations. They're fundamental principles derived from years of observing mental patterns that differentiate true achievers from those who merely dream. This knowledge was distilled from my personal conversations with Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, Alexander Graham Bell, and hundreds of other innovators who not only achieved greatness but maintained it. When Andrew Carnegie assigned me the mission of formulating the first philosophy of success based on practical principles, he warned me about something crucial. "Hill," he said, "you'll discover that the greatest obstacle to success isn't external circumstances, but the internal limitations people impose on themselves." At that moment, I didn't fully comprehend the depth of that observation. Now, after decades of investigation, I clearly see that Carnegie was identifying this fundamental paradox. We fear our success more than our failure. What differentiates my approach is that I'm not merely telling you what to do, I'm revealing how to transform the fundamental structure of your thinking so that success becomes not just possible, but inevitable. While other personal development experts focus on techniques and strategies, my research revealed that without first reconfiguring your internal relationship with success, all these techniques are like seeds thrown on infertile soil. Few people understand that the mind works like an iceberg. Only a small fraction is visible to consciousness. Most operates in the depths, guided by beliefs and associations formed long before we had the capacity to question them. It's in these depths that the true barriers to your success reside. Imagine for a moment that you could identify and reprogram these limiting beliefs. That you could not only recognize when you're sabotaging your own success, but transform that pattern into its opposite. That you could perfectly align your conscious desires with your subconscious programming. This isn't a utopian fantasy. It's a scientific possibility based on the principle that the mind can be trained, just like muscles, through specific exercises, repetition, and consistent application. And most importantly, this transformation is within reach of anyone willing to do the necessary work. You're about to discover why so many people come so close to their goals only to back away at the critical moment. You'll understand why success often brings with it an inexplicable discomfort, and how to transcend that discomfort to achieve levels of fulfillment that previously seemed impossible. This is knowledge that few possess, not because it's secret, but because few have the courage to confront the true nature of their relationship with success. Are you among those few? The path I'm going to show is different from anything you've heard before. It's not about working harder, nor about revolutionary productivity techniques. It's about fundamentally realigning your mindset so that success becomes a natural outcome of who you are, not something you constantly have to struggle for. To transform your relationship with success, we need to understand the fundamental principles that govern the human mind and its relationship with achievement. These are the principles that determine whether you'll advance courageously toward success or recoil from it. The first principle is what I call automatic identification. Your mind subconsciously seeks experiences that confirm who you believe yourself to be. If you identify as someone who always struggles to survive, your mind will create circumstances that validate that identity, even if consciously you claim to want prosperity. Think of the mind as a thermostat programmed to maintain a specific temperature. If the thermostat is set to 68 degrees, it will automatically work to maintain that temperature, cooling the environment when it's hotter and heating it when it's colder. Similarly, if your self-image is programmed for a certain level of success, your mind will unconsciously work to maintain you at that level, no more, no less. I met a man named Robert who constantly came close to closing big deals, only to make inexplicable mistakes at the last hour. After analyzing his deep beliefs, we discovered that throughout his childhood he heard his father say, "People like us weren't born for wealth." Although he consciously rejected this idea, subconsciously it governed his actions. When Robert began to reprogram that identity, his patterns of self-sabotage disappeared. Identity transformation doesn't happen simply by wishing to be different. It requires a deliberate reconstruction of how you see yourself, through dissociation from your old self and the creation of a new self-image based on who you choose to become. When you change the I am, all your actions automatically change. The second principle is what I call comfort in the unknown. What prevents many people from embracing success is the simple fact that it represents unexplored territory. The human brain evolved to prefer the familiar, even when the familiar is painful, over the unknown, even when it promises pleasure. Imagine an eagle that has spent its entire life in a cage. When the door is opened, it often hesitates to leave, not because it loves confinement, but because it's the only state it knows. The world beyond is vast unknown, and the unknown generates primitive anxiety. Similarly, many of us remain in our metaphorical cages, unsatisfying jobs, dysfunctional relationships, self-imposed limitations, not because we love them, but because the alternative means facing the unknown. Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt once told me something I've never forgotten. You gain strength, courage, and confidence with every experience where you really stop and face your fear. This principle is clearly manifested in Thomas Edison's story. After hundreds of failed attempts to create the incandescent light bulb, he not only persisted but said that each failure brought him closer to success because it eliminated another path that didn't work. Edison embraced the unknown, transforming it from a threat into an opportunity. To master this principle, you must train your mind to find comfort in uncertainty, to see the unknown not as a frightening abyss, but as a field of infinite possibilities. This requires gradual exposure to situations that challenge your comfort zone, starting with small risks and progressively expanding your horizons. The third principle is the paradox of responsibility. Many people fear success because, subconsciously, they recognize that with greater success comes greater responsibility. And responsibility is frightening because it implies the possibility of disappointment, disappointing yourself and others. Think of responsibility as a garden. A small garden requires little maintenance. If a few plants die, the impact is minimal. But a vast garden demands constant, skilled attention. The possibility of failure is much more consequential. So it is with our lives. Limited success means limited responsibility. Great success means great responsibility. I met a brilliant writer named James who completed 3 novels but never sent them for publication. When he finally confronted his fear, he realized he wasn't afraid the books would be rejected. He feared they would be accepted and people would actually read them. For if they were read, he would be responsible for the impact of his words on the world. Transformation occurs when you recognize that responsibility isn't a burden to be avoided, but an opportunity to exercise your influence in the world. As Henry Ford once told me, the quality of a man is measured by the dimension of responsibility he voluntarily assumes. The 4th principle is what I call fear of separation. Often, we fear that success will distance us from the people we love or the communities to which we belong. This fear has deep roots in our evolutionary psychology in primitive times. Being separated from the tribe meant almost certain death. Imagine a man growing up in a community where no one has ever attended college. When he receives a scholarship to a prestigious institution, he faces an internal dilemma. Embracing this opportunity might mean growing beyond the shared experiences with family and friends. Success, in this case, represents not just gain, but also potential loss, the loss of belonging. Andrew Carnegie shared with me how this dynamic almost prevented him from pursuing his most ambitious ventures. Born into poverty in Scotland, each new level of success distanced him a little more from his origins. What saved him was his ability to build bridges between these worlds, to use his success to benefit not just himself, but also his community of origin. To transcend this fear, you must recognize that true success doesn't isolate you. It expands your capacity for connection and impact. It's not about leaving people behind, but about becoming capable of elevating others with you. Now, I want you to pause and reflect. Which of these principles resonates most deeply with you? Which one best explains the patterns that have limited your progress? Leave a comment below, sharing your biggest discovery so far. Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. I know that as you absorb these principles, voices of doubt begin to arise in your mind. Napoleon Hill may have studied great men, but my situation is different. These principles work for exceptional people, not ordinary people like me. I've tried to change my mindset before and it didn't work. Let me address these natural hesitations, because the ability to overcome these internal objections will be crucial for your journey. Some will question, how can I reprogram beliefs formed over decades? Isn't it like trying to change the course of an already established river? The answer is both simple and profound. Your mind isn't a concrete river, but a living flow constantly changing. William James, the great psychologist, observed that the human brain remains malleable throughout life, a phenomenon that modern science now calls neuroplasticity. This means that your mental patterns can be reconfigured at any age or stage of life. Thomas Edison was 59 when he created the first sound recording on a phonograph cylinder. Colonel Sanders was 65 when he started Kentucky Fried Chicken. Anna Mary Robertson Moses, known as Grandma Moses, began painting seriously at 78 and became one of America's most celebrated artists. The question isn't whether you can change it, whether you'll choose to do the necessary work to change. Others will argue, but you don't understand the particular circumstances I face. Let me be absolutely clear. External circumstances rarely determine a person's destiny. During the Great Depression, while millions lost everything, some of America's greatest business empires were built. When Thomas Edison lost his laboratory in a catastrophic fire destroying years of work and irreplaceable prototypes, he went back to work the next day, saying that all his mistakes had been burned and now he could start again. You may be wondering, if these principles are so powerful, Why aren't they more widely known and practiced? The answer is simple, but challenging, because they require you to face truths about yourself that most prefer to avoid. It's easier to blame external circumstances for failure than to examine the internal patterns that generate it. It's more comfortable to believe that success depends on luck or privilege than to accept responsibility for your own mental evolution. Perhaps your mind is protesting, "I've tried positive thinking before, and it didn't change anything in my life." It's crucial to understand that what I'm presenting isn't merely superficial positive thinking. I'm talking about a fundamental reconstruction of your relationship with success, not just decorating your fear with cheerful affirmations. This methodology doesn't ignore challenges, it transforms them into stepping stones for growth. You might be questioning, if I actually achieve success, how will I deal with the greater expectations and pressures? Consider this: all navigation requires constant adjustments. The skillful captain doesn't fear changing winds. He learns to adjust his sails. Similarly, the successful individual doesn't fear growing responsibilities. He develops the ability to respond to them with flexibility and wisdom. Or perhaps you're thinking, if I become successful, will I become like those arrogant people I've always despised? This is a deeply revealing objection, as it shows how frequently we associate success with negative characteristics. But think about this: true success doesn't transform a good person into someone despicable. It simply amplifies who you already are. If you maintain values of humility, generosity, and integrity, success will only expand your capacity to manifest these values in the world. And what about this thought? If I achieve great success, people will only like me for what I can offer, not for who I really am. This concern reveals a deep fear of isolation. But here's a truth I discovered when studying great achievers: genuine success attracts authentic relationships. Yes, it will also attract people with selfish interests, but it will also connect you with others who share your vision and values. Reflect honestly. How many of your decisions are motivated by these underground fears? How many opportunities have you let pass, not for lack of capability, but because of these unrecognized internal conflicts? What prevents most people from overcoming these obstacles isn't their validity, but the reluctance to confront them directly. When you have the courage to name your fears and examine the beliefs that sustain them, they begin to lose their power over you. Now that we've explored the fundamental principles that govern our relationship with success, the time has come to understand how they work together as an integrated system, a synchronized engine that will drive your transformation. Think of these principles as the gears of a refined clock. In isolation, each gear has its function, but it's only when they work in harmony that time is marked with precision. Similarly, each of the principles we discussed represents a vital part of a larger system of self-transformation. To illustrate how these principles intertwine, let me share the metaphor of mental alchemy. In traditional alchemy, one sought to transform base metals into gold. In mental alchemy, we transform our fears, especially the fear of success, into fuel for our ascension. The first element of this alchemy is awareness, recognizing the subconscious patterns that have governed your actions. The second is acceptance, not resisting or denying these patterns, but understanding them with compassion. The third is transmutation, redirecting the energy of these fears toward constructive purposes. And the fourth is manifestation, the external expression of your new internal identity. When the principle of automatic identification meets comfort in the unknown, you develop the ability to consciously redefine your identity while navigating unexplored territories. When the paradox of responsibility combines with the fear of separation, you learn to use your growing influence to strengthen, not break, your most significant connections. Henry Ford perfectly exemplified this integration When he began to revolutionize manufacturing with the assembly line, he faced immense resistance. Critics said his ideas were impractical. Workers feared mechanization would destroy jobs. Ford could have backed down in the face of this opposition, allowing fear of the unknown and separation to stop him. Instead, he used these very challenges as catalysts for innovation. Ford recognized that true separation wouldn't come from his success, but from the refusal to manifest his vision. He understood that greater responsibility wasn't a burden, but an opportunity to elevate thousands of workers to a better life through higher wages and affordable automobiles. He transmuted his fears into determination, and the result was a transformation that far surpassed his own life. To implement these principles in your own life, I offer this simplified action plan. First, practice daily mental archaeology. Set aside 10 minutes each morning to question your automatic reactions. When you feel resistance to progress, ask, what am I really fearing here? What identity am I protecting? Write down your discoveries without judgment. This simple practice begins to illuminate the dark corners of your subconscious mind. Second, develop your discomfort muscle through gradual exposure. Identify actions that would bring you closer to success but that you avoid due to discomfort, whether making that important call, sharing your work publicly, or requesting honest feedback. Commit to performing one of these actions daily, starting with the least intimidating and progressing to the most challenging. Third, cultivate the community of elevation. Your social environment is too powerful to be left to chance. Deliberately seek relationships with people who already live at the level of success you aspire to, and with those who will genuinely support you in your transformation. Simultaneously, find ways to elevate your current community, showing that your growth can benefit, not threaten, your existing relationships. Fourth, practice alchemical visualization. Different from simply visualizing desired outcomes. This exercise involves vividly imagining not just success, but also the challenges and responsibilities that accompany it. Visualizing yourself masterfully handling them. Specifically include images of you managing success well while maintaining healthy relationships and intact values. Fifth, implement the future identity technique. Write a detailed description of who you will have become 5 years after achieving your most ambitious goals. How does this person think? How do they make decisions? How do they handle adversity? Then, daily, before facing important decisions, ask, how would my future self approach this situation? And act from that expanded perspective. The beauty of this integrated methodology is that it not only removes obstacles to success, but fundamentally transforms your relationship with it. Success ceases to be something external that you desperately pursue and becomes a natural expression of who you are becoming. When all these elements work in harmony, a remarkable transformation occurs. The fear of success doesn't just disappear, it is transmuted into your most potent fuel. As Andrew Carnegie once told me, obstacles are those frightening things you see when you take your eyes off your goal. With these integrated principles, you not only keep your eyes fixed on your goals, you recognize the obstacles for what they really are: stepping stones disguised as barriers. My friend, we've reached the crucial point in our conversation, the moment of decision. Everything we've discussed so far, the fundamental principles, the patterns of self-sabotage, the transformation strategies, has value only to the extent that you decide to act on them. Knowledge without application is like owning a treasure map without ever setting out on the journey. The uncomfortable truth I must share is that there are two types of people listening to me now. Those who will transform these ideas into immediate action, and those who will add this conversation to their collection of intellectual knowledge without ever materializing its potential. The difference between these two groups isn't intelligence, talent, or luck, it's simply the willingness to act despite discomfort. Don't wait another day to begin this transformation. Each moment of hesitation strengthens old patterns and weakens your determination. The neurological changes we discussed literally begin the moment you decide to act. New brain connections are formed. Old circuits begin to weaken, and the momentum of transformation is initiated. Think about this. A year ago, you were probably contemplating changes that, if implemented then, would have transformed your current reality. A year from now, you'll look back at this moment and wonder, did I act courageously on that knowledge? Or did I allow another opportunity for transformation to slip through my fingers? Thomas Edison once told me, vision without execution is hallucination. Your dream of an extraordinary life will remain an enchanting hallucination until you anchor it in reality through consistent and deliberate action. Don't let the fear of success, that invisible adversary you can now name, continue to determine the limits of your achievements. The responsibility for change is solely yours. No mentor, however wise, no book, however profound, and no lecture, however inspiring, can do the work for you. I can illuminate the path, but you must take each step. Start today by committing to the daily practice of mental archaeology I described. This simple 10-minute routine of self-inquiry, maintained consistently, will reveal insights that no external guru could ever offer. Next, select an action from your territory of discomfort, something you know you should do but have been avoiding, and execute it within the next 24 hours. These aren't casual suggestions. They're precise prescriptions based on decades of observing. What really differentiates those who transform knowledge into results from those who merely accumulate information, the difference isn't in understanding, it's in implementation. Imagine yourself 6 months from now, having applied these principles daily. Visualize not just the external results, which will certainly combat the internal transformation, the freedom of no longer being governed by unconscious fear of your own power and potential. Imagine the feeling of completely aligning your conscious aspirations with your subconscious programming, removing the internal friction that has drained your energy and limited your achievements. Remember, you're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of what happens if you succeed. And now that you understand this paradox, you can transform it from limitation to liberation. When I had the honor of meeting Helen Keller, a woman who overcame obstacles that most of us can barely imagine, she shared a wisdom that I carry with me. Security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature, nor do the children of men as a whole experience it. Avoiding danger is no safer in the long run than outright exposure. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Your reluctance to fully embrace success wasn't a sign of weakness, but of intuitive wisdom. You knew, at some level, that true success would require a complete transformation, and complete transformations are rarely comfortable. But now you possess the tools to navigate that transformation consciously, converting resistance into resolution and fear into fuel. The world is waiting for the version of you that isn't afraid of your own power. The talents you possess weren't given to remain dormant, limited by subconscious fear of what might happen if they were fully expressed. They were given to be manifested, multiplied, and offered in service of a greater purpose. This is your moment, not a month from now, when circumstances are better, not after another course or book. Now the time for analysis has ended. The time for action has begun. Subscribe to this channel right now to continue this journey of transformation, and leave a comment sharing the most valuable insight you extracted from this conversation. Your comment will not only solidify your understanding, but may be precisely what someone else needs to read to begin their own transformation. Remember these final words: success isn't something you pursue, it's something you attract by becoming the person capable of achieving it. And that person, that expanded, fearless, and powerful version of you is waiting on the other side of the fear that you are now prepared to transcend. The fear you feel isn't a signal to retreat, it's an invitation to advance. It's the portal through which all great achievers have passed. And now it's your turn to cross it.